Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Stephanie Bree, and today it's time for another Top 25. This is the Top 25 greatest video game franchises of all time. Now, there are a couple of caveats. A game, in order for me to consider it to be a franchise, has to have at least 3 completely unique entries. It can't just be reboots, remasters, or re-releases. So, The Last of Us doesn't count because there's only The Last of Us and its sequel, and God knows how many remakes and remasters at this point. That is not a franchise. That's a single game and a direct sequel. Now, if they ever make 2 or 3 more, we'll put The Last of Us somewhere on a future list, possibly, maybe. That's just as an example. Also, this is my list of the best franchises. The criteria is I have to enjoy at least 3 games in the franchise in order for me to put it on the list. And it has to have been represented on more than one console generation for me to say that it's among the greatest. Because if it was only like, the 3 NES Super Mario games and that was it and they never made any others, it probably wouldn't have made the list because, well, yeah, those are 3 great games, but they're like 40 years old at this point. Give me a break. So number 25 theoretically should be higher on this list because nearly every game in this franchise is a 10 out of 10. Some of them are 9 out of 10. The lowest you're going to get is an 8.5 out of 10, and that's still pretty damn good until recent years. In the last 5 or so years, this franchise fell off a cliff, and that's why it's at number 25, because I could bump it for something else, and I would feel okay with that. And this is Star Wars. Since the beginning of video games, just about, Star Wars was there. They were on the Atari. They were on the NES. They were on the Super NES. Not the Genesis, unfortunately. There was a couple of Star Wars games on the Sega CD, and one on the 32X, but that's neither here nor there. And then there were a shit ton of games on computers, arcades, PlayStation. GameCube had a bunch of Star Wars exclusives, and they were all actually good games. Xbox had some exclusives. PlayStation, Dreamcast had some Star Wars games. Nintendo 64. All the various handhelds had some sort of Star Wars game. And by and large, more often than not, the rule of thumb was they were good quality games. There were always exceptions. Like the Jedi Battles, whatever the fuck it is, on the PlayStation 1. Yeah, that game kind of sucks. But that's the exception to the rule. In general, the rule was, you knew if you were buying a Star Wars game, whatever genre of gameplay that game was, you knew it was going to be a good game. Whether it was Shadows of the Empire, or Empire at War, or Knights of the Old Republic, or Star Wars Unleashed, it didn't matter. You knew you could trust Star Wars as a great video game franchise. Not today. Today, you have to wait and see what the reviews are and what's the user opinion, if the game is worth a shit or not, because they've really gone downhill in the last few years. Number 24 is The Elder Scrolls. Now, The Elder Scrolls had 2 inconsequential entries before Morrowind. So, yeah, they exist, but nobody played them. Not really. But Morrowind was the game that put Elder Scrolls on the map. Oblivion was the game that said Elder Scrolls is here to stay. And Skyrim is the fucking game that launched the Elder Scrolls into the goddamn stratosphere. Now, you also have Elder Scrolls Online and a few other spin-offs and tie-in games. But if you want an authentic Dungeons & Dragons, medieval, dungeon crawler, Western RPG experience that isn't official licensed Dungeons & Dragons, The Elder Scrolls is absolutely for you. And me as well, because that's what I'm looking for in a role-playing game. Something that feels like this is Dungeons & Dragons, even if it officially isn't. Number 23 I hesitate to put on the list because I am not a fan of this franchise, but even I will admit I have had some entries in this franchise that blew me away or that were a lot of fun because the core gameplay is still pretty fun. Now, I will say, ancillary objectives, blah, not interested. But the core gameplay is still hella fun. And we're talking about motherfucking Grand Theft Auto. Now, not only is Grand Theft Auto by far one of the most lucrative video game franchises to have ever existed, it's one of the most lucrative media franchises to have ever existed. So, I can say with absolute certainty, you've probably played a Grand Theft Auto game in your life at some point in time, if not multiple. Now, my first experience with Grand Theft Auto was GTA 3 on the PS2, and my god, I was blown away. Because the first two Grand Theft Autos are fucking primitive as shit in comparison. You're talking about games that look like they could have been on the Super Nintendo or the Sega CD versus an open world 3D environment game with DVD quality cinematics. In, what was it, 2002 when that came out? 2001 when that game came out? Mind fucking blowing. Now, the gameplay is still Grand Theft Auto. You steal a car, and you run over hookers, and you run from the cops, and you kind of have missions, but I never did the missions, because the whole point of the game is to run over the hookers, and run from the cops, and steal as many cars as you can fucking get away with. That's why it's called Grand Theft Auto. It's in the fucking name of the game. I also really liked Vice City. I think that of all the Grand Theft Autos, if I'm ever going to make a case that... If I was ever going to make a case that a video game could be art, Vice City is fucking art. It is a goddamn work of art. This is not debatable in my opinion. And Vice City is probably the best Grand Theft Auto game they've ever made. And again, they did it on the PS2. Now, there were some, shall we say, controversies surrounding, well, Vice City in particular, but essentially every version of Grand Theft Auto. And yes, I do have, and have played quite a bit of Grand Theft Auto 5 on the PS4, because it's still a pretty fucking solid-ass game. I've also played Grand Theft Auto 4 on my friend's Xbox 360, and I had a couple of the spin-off PSP games on my PS3 that came with, I believe it was a digital bundle that I bought that came with the 3 PS2 games as a digital download, and 2 of the PSP games. I think it was Liberty City Stories and Grand Theft Auto. It was Liberty City Stories and something Stories. I don't remember because I haven't booted up my PS3 in well over a year. But Grand Theft Auto is a very fantastic video game franchise. Number 22, Donkey Kong. Donkey Kong goes all the way back to the arcade days. That's a perfect game, 5 out of 5 stars. You had a handful of questionable entries on the Nintendo Entertainment System. And then you got the 5 out of 5 star Donkey Kong Country and its 2 sequels on the Super Nintendo. A slew of kick-ass Donkey Kong games on the Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, Nintendo DS, and even the Game Boy Color. A shit ton of Game Boy Donkey Kong. Now, Donkey Kong has had some missteps along the way, like Donkey Konga and Donkey Kong Country, or Jungle Beat, I should say. And even I would argue Donkey Kong 64 kind of sucks. But, you know, they redeemed themselves with Returns and Tropical Freeze. And he's hella iconic. 21 is a franchise. It's over. It's played out. I'm going to be honest with you. It's fucking played out. But who didn't enjoy Call of Duty at some point? You know, I bought, maybe not on launch day, I don't remember if it was available on launch day, but I bought my Wii at launch, and I got Call of Duty 3 the day it was available for the Wii. The very first day it was available. So if it was a launch title, I got it at launch. I cannot say with absolute certainty because I bought every game that was available at Target when I bought my Wii at Kmart because they're the ones who had it. They had none of the software, unfortunately. So I went over to Target and bought literally every game they had available because I'd been saving up for the Wii because I was dying to play a Wii. I would later regret this, but Call of Duty 3 was a fucking awesome game. It was a great experience on the Wii. I had already played Call of Duty 2 Big Red One on the Xbox 360. And I couldn't tell you which one. I have a random Call of Duty game on my PS5. I had a couple of them on the PS4, PS3. Let me start over. I had a couple of them on the PS3, and I have one of them on the PS4. I don't have a PS5. And I played more of them than I can ever admit to at friends' houses on their PlayStations and Xboxes and everything else. I even have one of them on the PS2 somewhere lying around. Whichever one was on the PS2. Everybody knows Call of Duty. And here's the thing. Even if the missions suck or the online sucks, the core gameplay is still pretty solid game after game. Now, number 20 is one of those franchises that is hit or miss for people. I would argue it's got more misses than hits, but that's because of spin-offs, not necessarily main entries. But when they do get a hit, they knock it out of the park every goddamn time. We're talking about Final Fantasy. The OG, that's a hit. Final Fantasy 3, that's a hit. 7, one of the greatest fucking games of all time, that's a hit. X, that's a hit. 15, that's a miss. 13 is pretty good. 12 is okay. 9 is good. 8 is better. Final Fantasy is fucking awesome. I love it. It is one of the only Japanese RPGs, JRPGs, I can actually stomach because it's not overly anime cutified, which I'm not a fan of. Number 19 is Need for Speed. I don't have to tell you how great it is. It's one of the best, most prolific, most iconic racing franchises. I've had more Need for Speed games than I can name them all. Probably my favorite was Underground. I had it on the GameCube. Loved it. Number 18 is NBA Jam. This one barely qualifies because most of your NBA Jam games, they're just NBA Jam. It's just ports of the arcade game. But it did have a handful of sequels, a couple of reboots, and it's had some spiritual successors. So I'll count it. Number 17 is Metroid. Great fucking sci-fi action adventure game. You got your side-scrolling Metroidvania type games, you know, the OG, you've got Fusion, you've got Super Metroid. These are all pretty good games for the most part. The OG is not as good as people say it is, but it's still fine. It's not great, but it's playable. Super Metroid is fucking fantastic, though. So is Fusion. And then you got the 3D first-person shooters. Metroid Prime. You got Hunters, and then I guess Other M. I've never played it, but I guess. So those are awesome, fantastic games, too, of varying degrees of quality. But again, they're more hits than misses. Just a step above that, and I can't rank it any higher, I'm sorry to all the fanboys and fangirls of this franchise. I can't rank it any higher, because it's the same fucking game every time. They just add more shit to it. It's Super Smash Brothers. I don't have to tell you about Smash Brothers. Let's move on. Number 15 is Prince of Persia. Now, Prince of Persia is interesting because it's an early example of a narrative video game back when video games were still too primitive to really do narrative video games with graphics and playable gameplay. Yeah, you could have Zork, but that's a text-based adventure game. But it was sort of an action platformer that had cutscenes and animations and things like that. It got ported to fucking everything back in the day. There was a Dreamcast entry we don't talk about. And then it really made its return to form on the PS2, GameCube, Xbox era with the Sands of Time trilogy, which is basically the foundation of Assassin's Creed, which basically replaced Prince of Persia in the video game market space. I still say they're Prince of Persia games, more or less. But they're not in this slot. This is Prince of Persia specifically. And specifically because of Warrior... Is it Warrior Within? On, well, the PS2 era. I had it on GameCube, but it was probably good on the others. Number 14 is Resident Evil. RE Remake on the GameCube. Resident Evil 2. Resident Evil 4, I don't have to go on. I just made my case. Alright, number 13 is Bomberman. Bomberman is a good party game, and people love to bust it out when they got gamer friends over. There's a Bomberman game on almost every console conceivable. Even the failed consoles that do not make a dent in the marketplace, Saturn, TurboGrafx, etc., have a Bomberman game. It's that prolific. Number 12 is Doom. I love Doom. The original Doom, a goddamn classic, a fucking masterpiece. Come at me. Doom 2, still pretty good. Doom 3, great fucking game. Doom 2016, I'll argue is even better than Doom 3. Doom has been basically, at the bare minimum, a 4-star game every entry. I'll give it that. Number 11 is mostly here for nostalgic purposes. I'm going to be honest with you because they haven't done shit in the last 10 years worth of shit. They've had a couple of who gives a fuck entries, and again, who gives a fuck. But back in the 80s, on the NES and the Super NES, Double Dragon was the shit. Now, I know I'm bending my own rule that I stated at the beginning of the video, because Double Dragon hasn't really done anything worth a shit since Neon, which was okay. It was a fine game. And it's had a couple of decent-ish entries here or there. But Double Dragon belongs on this list because as a franchise, we still respect it as gamers because it was dope as fuck back in the day. We all played the shit out of it on the NES, in the arcade. We had Double Dragon versus Battletoads on the Genesis. I did on the Genesis. Some of y'all had it on the Super Nintendo. Great fucking game. Number 10. This one, you're gonna, you know, because you're like, it's only got one good game in the entry, in the franchise. And I'm gonna be like, fuck you, it does. It's Pac-Man. Now, obviously, the original OG Pac-Man, classic. But you've got Pac-Man, what is it? Versus is pretty good. 99 is pretty good. You know, Ms. Pac-Man, one of the greatest games ever. That one's questionable because it's technically a ROM hack, but it is a semi-official ROM hack, so there's that. But you've also got Pac Attack, which is pretty good. But dude, Pac-Man World on the PlayStation, really good game. Pac-Man World 2 on the PS2 and the GameCube. I had it on GameCube, obviously. Great fucking game. Pac-Man World 3, we don't talk about. We don't talk about it. Ghostly Adventures of Pac-Man on the Wii U of all systems. You know what? It was a good game. Play it. I dare you, because you'll enjoy it. And then you've got like Pac-Man Fever and everything else. Yeah, this counts. This fucking counts, assholes. Number 9 is Tetris. And I know what you're saying. This one doesn't count because it's the same game with minor tweaks every time. And I'm going to tell you, have you tried Tetris 2 on the Super Nintendo? Have you tried Tetris Attack, also on the Super Nintendo? Have you tried Tetris Plus on the Sony PlayStation? Yes, obviously. Tetris DS on the Nintendo DS. No, there are plenty of variations of Tetris that are not just the core Tetris. But you, me, my mom, your mom, grandma, everybody's mom, everybody's aunt bought a Game Boy to play Tetris. So don't tell me this doesn't belong on the greatest franchises of all time list, because it is. It's the best-selling video game of all time. Nothing comes close. Number 2 isn't even in the running. It's goddamn Tetris. Alright? Number 8, Mega Man. Now this one is iffy because it really doesn't appeal to the masses. Mega Man is a core gamer's game. A hardcore gamer's game. It does not have universal appeal. But they have made strides at various points to try to make the game accessible to more people. Mega Man X on the Super Nintendo comes to mind. The Battle Network games on whatever the fuck they were on come to mind. Legends on the PlayStation 1, inexplicably renamed to Mega Man 64 on the Nintendo 64. Mega Man 8 on the Saturn and PlayStation, pretty good game. Mega Man 2 on the NES, one of the greatest games on the NES, I'll give you that. There's some really rock-solid fucking Mega Man games. I guess no pun intended because he's known as Rockman in Japan, but there you go. Number 7 is Diablo. Diablo, the original PC game. It also had a PlayStation port. Great game. Diablo 2, a little bit better. Diablo 3, my opinion, the best in the franchise, but I can only say that because I haven't even played Diablo 4 yet, and I'm fucking dying to play Diablo 4, and I can't because I don't have the money. But someday. Number 6 is Street Fighter, but specifically Street Fighter 2 or post-Street Fighter. Because the original Street Fighter sucks. We can all universally agree on that. But from Street Fighter 2 on, it's been a rock-solid franchise. Yeah, you had the 15 variations of Street Fighter 2 from, I don't even know them all, Hyper Fighting and Champion Edition and everything else. But then you had Street Fighter Third Strike, pretty good. Street Fighter 4 on the PS3, really good. Street Fighter 5 on the PS4, I have it. It's fucking awesome. And then you've had all the Street Fighter versus everybody games. Great fucking franchise. Absolutely great time. Damn fucking good game. Number 5 is Sonic the Hedgehog. This one is the most contentious game on my franchise on my list, especially for being so high. But god damn it, I got a Genesis on my 12th birthday. It came with Sonic the Hedgehog 2. This game was going to make the list. Okay? But also, Sonic Adventure on the Dreamcast was mind-blowing when it came out. And it was still pretty good on the GameCube. Because yes, I had it on the GameCube. And I had it on the PS3. Sonic Spinball, pretty fun game. Sonic CD, pretty good game. I enjoy Sonic 06, but I understand why people don't. But then you've got like Sonic Mania. That's a great game. The Sonic Advance games are okay. Okay. Sonic Unleashed, Sonic Rush, oh, alright, fine. Colors, okay. But you got some good games. You got some okay games. You got some not okay games. I'll give you that. But the good games are generally really good. Generations was really good. Sonic Adventure was really good. So yeah, he's a top-notch experience. Number 4 is Mortal Kombat. I play Mortal Kombat. I love Mortal Kombat. I'm a Mortal Kombat fan. I saw the movie in the theaters. I have it on VHS. Both of them. DVD, Blu-ray. The third one, the remake, I don't even like, and I have it on Blu-ray. The animated film, I have that on Blu-ray. I have the soundtrack of all of the soundtracks on CD. Actual physical CD. I love Mortal Kombat. Yeah, as a franchise, Mortal Kombat's great. As a media franchise, it's got a compelling story and very interesting characters. As a fighting game, god damn is it good. Mortal Kombat still the original arcade game, and 2 out of the 3 home ports are still pretty good. The Genesis is pretty good. The Sega CD is pretty good. Fuck anyone that likes the Super Nintendo game, you're an idiot. Get the goddamn Genesis version and shut the fuck up. This is the one time I can say that. The one game I can say that. Mortal Kombat Trilogy, great fucking game. Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance, top 5 out of 5 stars. Mortal Kombat 9, pretty solid game. X, pretty good game. 11, meh. And the new one is still getting good reviews. So, yeah, Mortal Kombat's fucking awesome. Gameplay-wise, I still rate Mortal Kombat higher than Street Fighter because I feel like it represents martial arts better than just punch, kick, punch, kick, punch, kick. You can do actual martial arts moves in Mortal Kombat. You can just do medium, fast, and weak punch, or medium, fast, and weak kick on Street Fighter. So, suck it, Street Fighter fans. Mortal Kombat's the better fighting game. Get the fuck over it. Number 3 is Castlevania, the OG on the NES. Well, I guess there was a computer version, but... you've got Super Castlevania 4 on the Super Nintendo. Symphony of the Goddamn Night on the Sony PlayStation and Sega Saturn. Also ported to Xbox 360 and everything else, PS3 and everything else since then. Great fucking game. Dawn of Sorrow, great game. Area of Sorrow, great fucking game. Legacy, better than people say. There's some good fucking Castlevanias out there. I rank Castlevania so high because Symphony of the Night is a goddamn masterpiece. I probably would put Symphony of the Night, I'd probably put it in my top 10 greatest video games of all time. It's that fucking good. I'm a horror fan. I have a whole YouTube channel devoted to horror movies. I love vampires. This is a fucking, this is right up my alley. Number 2 goes all the way back to the NES and is still going hella strong to this day. It's had some side entries that were questionable. It's had some spin-offs that were god-awful. But every single mainline entry has been a goddamn masterpiece with one exception. One exception. The original Legend of Zelda on the NES, Zelda 2, A Link to the Past, Ocarina of Time, The Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword, Breath of the Wild, and the new one are all goddamn 10 out of 10, 5 out of 5 star, however you rate. Perfect fucking games. Majora's Mask can eat my grandmother's asshole. The rest of them are great fucking games. The Game Boy games are good. The handheld games, Link's Awakening, Minish Cap, Phantom Hourglass, Link Between Worlds. Those are all great fucking games. The Legend of Zelda, in the world of video games, Zelda is God. You pay your goddamn respects to God. You do not disrespect God. You can shit on Majora's Mask, because even God makes mistakes, but you don't shit on the rest of Zelda. Number 1, as much as I love Zelda, and goddamn do I love Zelda, aside from Majora's Mask, I have never played a bad Zelda game. Majora's Mask is a bad game. But I even like Wind Waker. I actually like the cartoony art style, and I'm not even a fan of cartoons. I had issues with Wind Waker, but I still enjoyed it. For the most part. I shit on it a lot because of, it's fun to shit on, but it's still a good game. But nothing in the world of video games is bigger, makes more money as a franchise, not a single entry, more popular, or just more important to video games than motherfucking Mario. Nothing is more important to video games than Mario. We wouldn't have the goddamn video game industry we have today if it weren't for fucking Mario. There would be no Nintendo consoles, NES, Switch, none of it if there hadn't been a Mario. He was the main character in Donkey Kong, and Nintendo president Hiroshi Yamauchi mandated that they create a home console to play Donkey Kong in your living room. That is the only reason why the Famicom exists. And when they brought it to the US and rebranded it and redesigned it as the Nintendo Entertainment System, the NES, not NES, goddammit, NES. Learn to speak, people. Fucking NES, goddammit. NES is the name of a character. Anyways, Super Mario Brothers is the game that jump-started the multi-billion-dollar video game industry that we have today. Super Mario Brothers 2 kept that legacy going. Super Mario Brothers 3 took Mario into the stratosphere. Super Mario World put the SNES on the map. Super Mario 64, to this day, 25-year-old game, almost 30-year-old game, to this day, the best 3D platformer ever made. And nothing is ever going to touch it. Not even subsequent Mario games. And then you've got the new Super Mario games. You've got Odyssey. You've got Galaxy. This is all great. And then you've got the sports games. You got the Mario Kart games. The Mario Party games. God damn. There's so much Mario content. And I'm saying that in a good way. Because it's all fucking good. There's one thing I'll say about Nintendo. They make a lot of mistakes. They do a lot of shit that pisses me off. But I will always tip my hat to Mario. Because fuck that guy. He is the goddamn bomb.